Hello there, friends, and welcome. So, today we're talking about MSDNC today and how they're going to shame Michigan voters into voting for Joe Biden in the primary. And basically, the people can't actually think for themselves and be like, well, I don't know if I want to vote for Joe Biden because he is plausibly aiding and abetting a genocide right now, and I don't want to vote for him based on his policies towards Israel, which is full and unconditional support. You get these leaks from time to time basically saying that Joe Biden is secretly calling Benjamin Netanyahu an asshole and all these things. Those are just words, and the Democratic base wants there to actually be action to actually condition some of the aid on Israel to say, hey, you have to actually be pushing for some sort of ceasefire with Gaza. If you're not going to get a ceasefire in Gaza, you got to give them a Palestinian state after all of this. But apparently the words of the United States is all they can muster because there is actual pressure we can put on Israel. We're choosing not to let them conduct their war as they see fit. But we've had presidents in the past who have actually put pressure on Israel before, which is George W. Bush and Ronald Reagan, telling Israel when they were doing things we don't like them to do to stop. And they actually listened to both these presidents when they were told to stop. Not Joe Biden. He literally just goes out there and they just spit in his face saying, you're just going to give us what we want anyways. AIPAC has already bought out most of Congress, so you're not going to be able to actually stand against us anyways. And what are you going to do about it, Joe? You're going to do nothing.
There are aspects we have to talk about with Yasmin, who's joining us from Michigan, Dearborn specifically, talking to voters ahead of Tuesday's primary. That is a state, as you well know, Yasmin, where protesters have been very loud against Joe Biden's support for Israel. And as the New York Times has put it, Michigan's combination of an early primary, a large and politically active Arab American population, progressive students on college campuses, and the option of a protest vote have raised the stakes of what has otherwise been a sleepy election in the state. So what are the voters telling you, Yas?
There's a new poll out, Alex, at 45 to 41, in which the former president is leading Joe Biden right now in Michigan. Biden has a problem, Alex, in Michigan with the voters that I've been speaking to. These are all folks that voted for Biden in 2020. They have committed to voting uncommitted in the Michigan primary next Tuesday. And two of them are very much on the fence in voting for him for re-election in November. The other two absolutely will not be voting for him. They're angry about Gaza. They're angry he has not called for a permanent ceasefire as of yet. And they're angry that he has not come through on the promises he made when he was running for president back in...
If you ever watch my channel, this is my commitment to you. I'm not going to do blatant propaganda for the Republicans. I'm not going to do blatant propaganda for the Democrats. You can have your own voice and think that there are some things that Donald Trump is done unprecedentedly. He never actually conceded the election. That has never happened before. That is very dangerous. But don't go after people who have a mind of their own being like, I don't know if I can support Joe Biden because he is not doing anything to actually push this forward in some resolution in this conflict. They recently released their plan, which had no plans for a Palestinian state. And they said, we don't want to reward terrorism because of October 7th. When you put people in a boiling pot and literally don't let them leave and they can't go anywhere, and it's an open-air prison, which as many Israeli officials have called it, an open-air prison, are you really surprised you're going to get these outcries of violence that pop up because of the inhumane conditions? So Hamas needs to go, but the Israeli government also needs to go. They need to have someone who's actually a partner for peace. Hamas is not a partner for peace, and neither is Netanyahu and his coalition and his government. And Netanyahu was also in the process of trying to get rid of the judiciary, which is their checks and balances over there, and there were massive protests. And all of a sudden there was this attack from Hamas, and now he's in charge of the war plans, and people are trusting him to run the war and then leave afterwards, which means there's an incentive for him to start wars with Lebanon and Iran because it would keep him in power politically. And most of the Israeli people want Netanyahu gone. They don't want a Palestinian state. But unfortunately, the United States is aiding and abetting and giving them weapons, so we have some say over how those weapons are used. We've literally gotten rid of all checks and balances. Even in the State Department, usually there's a track on how these weapons are actually given to regimes and actually so they're not going to violate human rights abroad. But we have gotten rid of all of that when it comes to Israel. Man, Benjamin Netanyahu knows that if Donald Trump becomes president, there's going to probably be no checks and balances. But it already appears there are no checks and balances. So the powers that be keep telling us that Donald Trump is so bad. He's going to end democracy. He's going to do all these things. Well, I've heard from people who are in the political system who are really smart too. A person like this would be Chris Christie. Chris Christie said, don't be ridiculous. There's going to be another election. The only thing is Donald Trump could do a lot of damage in 4 years. And whether democracy is on the ballot, we don't know. It just seems like at this point, the Democratic establishment doesn't listen to its voters anyways. So are you really surprised that they're like, well, I'm not going to support this. It's always the lesser of two evils. And people are fucking sick of it because it's always, oh, this boogeyman's going to be really bad. It reminds me when President Obama was running against Mitt Romney, and they were trying to say Mitt Romney doesn't care about poor people. He's going to gut all social programs, and he's literally the boogeyman. We need to be afraid of him. And in reality, he was just a nice Mormon businessman. So if you cry wolf long enough, eventually people are going to stop fucking listening to you because they're going to be like, well, I mean, how much worse can it really be? Donald Trump would probably support Israel unconditionally. Well, Biden's already supporting Israel unconditionally. You might not have the window dressing being like we care about Palestinians and we want there to be a state, but it's just bullshit that they want to gaslight us and say, hey, don't believe us. Don't believe your own lying eyes. Believe us.
2020. Let's take a listen, Alex, to some of what they said and how they think or they believe Biden could possibly make up their vote between now and November. Is there a pathway forward for you with Biden?
Oh, absolutely not. You cannot keep killing people with our money and just keep thinking that, oh, we are stupid enough to elect you again because we'll fall in line. We'll forget. Like, this is an insult to me as a voter.
For you, Biden has a pathway forward.
Biden has a pathway forward. It's not
And what does that look like?
That is him calling for a permanent immediate ceasefire. The straightforward, simple answer for the Biden administration is push for a ceasefire, stop aiding Israel in their war crimes, and I guarantee you there are enough people who would be willing to deal with it and vote for the man. It is.
I would fall into this camp as far as like there is still a path for Joe Biden to actually get back some of these young voters, is to actually stop supporting Israel unconditionally, actually condition the aid to Israel, saying there has to be some sort of resolution after the war is over. Another plan that Joe Biden has to go with is he needs to make this election about abortion. There are already these red states that are endangering IVF treatments because their Supreme Courts have ruled that embryos are fucking children, which is insane. So you have the extremist Republicans on abortion, and what I think the first lady who spoke, that's like the extremist versions of the Democrat being like, I will not support Joe Biden. I think at this point, Joe Biden's throwing away the election unless he stops supporting Israel unconditionally and he needs to make it a center focus on abortion. Those are the two things that might save his ass this election cycle. But at this point, he seems to be unwilling to do the former, and it's all going to be about the latter. Well, you're going to need young people, sir, in order to win. And young people won't vote for you if there's not some sort of pressure on the Israeli government to actually not continue doing something plausibly, which would be a genocide. So at this point, we don't really know what's going to happen as far as this election. I don't know if Donald Trump's going to win. I don't know if Joe Biden's going to win. It's still a toss-up in my mind. Right now, it's favoring Donald Trump. It seems like to me the Democratic Party would just be like, la, 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 everything's fucking fine. Just fucking deal with it. And just gaslight us on the realities of Joe Biden's age and all this other shit. You know what gaslighting is? That's an abuser's tactic. That's what they do to their voters. They fucking abuse us and say, well, you know, the Republicans worse. And they kept crying wolf, and now we have Donald Trump, who is the first president to not concede an election, which is really bad. And all of a sudden, they just want to be like, well, you know, we're just going to go with the tried and true, gaslight our voters, make them question if they're the bad guy, versus I'm the one who's not actually willing to change policy when you're the person in charge. And what really annoys me about this whole election cycle is people are like, Joe Biden just needs to fix his messaging. He's the president of the United States. He's the most powerful man on earth. He can do a lot more as far as pressuring Israel to stop plausibly committing a genocide in Gaza. You have Israeli protesters who are literally blocking aid trucks to Gaza when people are starving. The Israeli military is not willing to do anything about it. Well, unfortunately, we have levers of power in this country, Joe Biden. So you can actually pressure Israel being like, hey, I'm turning the tap of the weapons off unless you're going to actually allow aid into Gaza. But he's not willing to do anything. Could it be that AIPAC has bought off our entire Congress and he would just be opposed there? Or is he just secretly for all this?
Is, in so many words, insane to me to have the Democratic Party and the Biden administration sit here and essentially say, if Trump happens, it's your fault.
If you don't want a Trump presidency, then are you not worried about what he could do domestically to this country?
Of course.
It's like a vaccine. I'm willing to take short-term pain for a long-term gain. I'm willing to let go of Joe Biden and oppose Joe Biden, make him a one-term president, punish Joe Biden by making him a one-term president and pairing his loss with the genocide in Gaza.
Why does our democracy, why is having a Trump presidency more important than those people's lives?
Yeah.
Why is our democracy more important than thousands of men, women, and children being killed?
So it's interesting, Alex, because it's not like they're saying we're not going to vote for Joe Biden and instead we're going to be voting for Donald Trump. That is not at all what they're saying, right? Instead of saying we are in this position in more of a big picture sense because of the Democratic Party, right? They're like, you haven't given us the candidates that we want. You haven't delivered the way in which we want. You're not listening to us. And we are sick of the political system in this country because of all of that. So this for them is kind of a warning shot saying it's time to change. It's time for something to change in this country.
I'm begging the Democratic Party to change course, but they don't fucking care whatever their voters think, whatever the people think. They are in charge. And the way they look at it is hopefully they'll forget this time November. There's a good chunk of the population and their voters who are not going to forget and who are either just not going to vote or they're either just going to vote third party. I don't think they're actually going to vote for Donald Trump. You need their votes in order to win the general election, sir. But unfortunately, they just don't care anymore. They're just like, well, we'll just prop up Donald Trump and say he's the boogeyman, he's going to end democracy, all these things. And whether or not he's actually going to do it, who fucking knows? I've listened to credible and smart people on both sides who have said, no, this dude is literally a danger to norms. People like Chris Christie say, don't be ridiculous, there's still going to be another election. The most vocal anti-Trump candidate said, don't be crazy, there's going to be another election in 2028. The only problem is this dude can do some real damage while he's in office for the next 4 years. And at this point, you know, I'll defend Trump a little bit. They've gone after him relentlessly, and it's been a witch hunt from the start with Donald Trump as far as, like, as soon as he became president, they were thinking of ways to impeach him, which the dude wasn't given a fair shake. That is not debatable in my mind. Whether he reacted in the correct way is the problem as far as Donald Trump is concerned. It speaks on his character. But simply just saying Donald Trump bad, Donald Trump bad, Donald Trump bad, that's their only tactic at this point. And Roe versus Wade got overturned. That's literally their tactic right now. And the problem is the Democrats and the Republicans, when it comes to like border issue or when it comes to Roe v. Wade, they could have codified some of this stuff into law a long time ago. They chose not to because they want political footballs for us to fight amongst each other. You might get some dissonant voters like these people who are sick of the choice of lesser of two evils and just say, hey, fuck it, I'm just not going to vote. Or hey, fuck it, I'm just going to like vote third party. Well, if that's what's going to happen, then this isn't the voters' fault. This is the policies of the administration. And that's all I just wanted to say. Good night and good luck.